So listen, we're just thinking we're going to be here for this little hour, a few thoughts that might trigger some things in our mind that we can use as tools in our day to help us get confidence that we just keep moving one step at a time, developing our amazing potential. That's the thing that keeps us going, I tell you. This is the Buddha's view, you know. Let's talk about that one. So we're sitting here for this reason. So we just think that's our motivation, to listen for tools to help us develop our potential so we can help others. That's our motivation. That's why we're sitting here together for this hour. So there's this nice saying in Buddhism that everybody possesses Buddha nature. We hear this lovely sound, this term, Buddha nature. Sounds very nice, vaguely, but we have all these weird ideas of what it means. Well, it's very, very logical, you know. I like to use the analogy of an acorn. You know, it's like, we know first of all, this is a good analogy. It's a really nice analogy. I like the analogy. So an acorn, you know, if you look at that thing on the ground and you're a little girl or something, and say you wouldn't know what it was. You have no idea. You have to be told. So it might be right next to an acorn. You know, it might be right underneath a great big oak tree. And you look at that big fat thing and you see there's an oak tree. And you look on the ground, you see a little thing, and you say, "What's that, Mummy?" She says, "Oh, darling, that's an acorn." And you'll say, "Well, what's an acorn?" Well, and Mummy will tell you, because you can't see by looking at it. It looks like a little round thing. I remember once using this analogy one time, and a person who was a mathematician gave me the proper name for that shape, very complicated Latin name. I don't know what the name is. I can't remember it. But whatever that shape is, it's not quite a cylinder. It's not quite a cone. I don't know if any clever person knows what that shape is. You please tell me. But whatever. So let's just call it a sort of an oval or something, even though it's not. So this little oval thing, and you know, and it's almost like looks like it's even got a little hat on it, doesn't it? So it looks very cute. So now you don't know what it is. You look at that. You can look at that thing, and you can look at an oak tree for 10 million years. It will never occur to you that what you do with an acorn is put it in the ground and then give it time and space and water and air and lots of nourishment, and it'll turn into an oak tree. Nobody in the universe can see that. It's not evident to us. So that's one point, and the really interesting point I want to go into. So the other one is your mother. What's that, darling? Well, she was speaking. If she was speaking like a Buddhist, she would say, "Oh, darling, that's a potential oak tree." And you go, "Huh? Please explain." So we know the word for that in English is called a seed. So we know a seed by definition is a thing you put in the ground that is the main cause of the fruit at the end, like an apple tree or whatever it might be. You know, a seed is the main cause. Well, actually, this is the analogy the Buddhist uses all the time for our own potential. So Buddha says we all have this potential to be a Buddha. And like I often say, and I'll say it again here, the etymology of that word is so tasty. It tells us so much. Bud implies the eradication from our mind of all the rubbish, all the delusions, all the ego, all the fears and the nonsense and the anger and the jealousy, which we in our culture assume are normal parts of a normal person. So normal that you think you'd be weird if you didn't have them. I remember recently in a course, one woman who'd never heard Buddhist teachings before, she almost laughed when she heard that, and it's understandable, but she said, "That's absurd. Nobody can become that way. You can't even imagine a person who's got no fear, no depression, no anxiety, no panic, no jealousy, no low self-esteem. You just can't even imagine. They sound like hysterical, because we are so normally our view in the world, and our own view, our own instinctive view, you know, is that this is very real stuff. It's very real, and it's definitely part of who I am. And in fact, we think it even defines us. I mean, this is why we get so miserable. So the Buddha's view is, no, you can get rid of it. I mean, this is an outrageous idea. But not only that, we can develop all the other stuff to perfection, love and compassion and wisdom. This is even more bizarre. We don't have views like this. It's easier to hear the words. It sounds kind of cute. Well, that's the meaning of Buddha. And Buddha's telling us from his own experience, from his own observation, from his own hard work on his own mind, his own internal investigation of the universe and of his own mind, that we've all got that potential. That in fact, by definition, a mind is a potential Buddha. So an oak tree is a potential oak tree. I mean, an acorn is a potential oak tree. In fact, therefore, you could say every acorn, by definition, is a potential oak tree. Oak treeness is what defines an acorn. Now, a squirrel doesn't know that. A squirrel sees breakfast. We might see a weapon and throw it at somebody's head, but we know and this is the interesting point again, it can be breakfast. No one says it can't be breakfast. No one says it can't. No one says you can't use it as a weapon, although it's not cool to do that. It can function as that, but what is it in its bones? And this is a discussion about what we are in our bones. What are we actually? So, of course, it depends on whose view. If you have a Christian view, you are whatever the words are the Christians would say for who you are. you know. If you're a materialist, you have another view. We're a brain, we have this and we have potential, we get born and we die. So we've got different viewpoints about this, you know. Here we're just obviously discussing Buddha's view. So we're discussing the Mahayana Buddha's view more specifically, because not all the Buddhist views in the world, there's Buddhism that's in Thailand and Burma, which is sort of like the wisdom wing, and the wisdom wing, where we talk about the junior school and high school. We've all got the opportunity, we've all got the potential, they say, this is Buddha's teaching, only mostly to get liberated from samsara, but not to become a Buddha. There are different levels of development, you know, but we're talking the Mahayana view here. So the Buddha's view is, from his own observation, that every mind, by definition, is not just possesses Buddha nature. Acorns don't just possess Buddha nature. Acorns are, by definition, potential oak trees. So it's a kind of powerful meaning. You could use it as a weapon, no problem. You could use it as breakfast. But what is it actually? What is it in its actual essence? It's a potential acorn. It's a potential oak tree. I think it's a great analogy. So then, okay, that's what Buddha's saying about all of us. Now, this is, I think my feeling is, when I first heard the Buddhist teachings, this was very encouraging, you know, because we know that the anger and the depression and the anxiety and the narrow-mindedness and the self-centeredness and the low self-esteem, they loom large in our minds, you know. Even if we're really nice people, and we know we're really nice people, we know we don't walk around being psychotic and murdering and raping people. We know we don't do that. Maybe we shoot our mouths off a bit much. We probably don't even kill mice. So we're probably really nice people, you know. But still, look how the stuff in our head looms large. And the voices are very loud, aren't they? So we can be forgiven for thinking it's our true nature. We can be forgiven for thinking that's what a human being is. But the Buddha's view is, yeah, we are that now. An acorn is just a little baby thing with a hat on it now, you know, but look what it can become. Look what its real nature is. This is very empowering, very encouraging, you know. So of course, what part of us becomes a Buddha? Not our nose and our ears and our eyelashes, not our body, not our brain, our cognitive process itself, our consciousness, our mind. So that's why it's so helpful, you know, to know a little bit just intellectually what the mind is for the Buddha, because it's not the way we talk. If we study psychology in the West, I mean, Charmaine can tell you she's a psycho, whatever she is, a psycho. You've got to say the right end of the word. A psycho is not a very good word. Psycho something, not a psychopath, but a psycho something, okay? She knows about the mind. What is it called? What are you called? What are you labeled?
Psychotherapist.
Thank you, psychotherapist. Not a psychopath or a psycho something else. So, you know, but it's very different. What she studies in Buddhism about the mind and what she's studying in the West are very, very different kettles of fish, you know? So the Buddha's expertise, and I think everybody can agree with this, is it's totally what you're learning is totally subjective. Not subjective in a negative way, subjective meaning internal as opposed to external. Not just behavior, but what drives our behavior. And that's what the mind is. So in our world, I think we have a very strong view there is behavior, and we can look at the behavior and indicate where a person's coming from, but we then have to try and analyze what happened on the outside to cause that behavior. Whereas the Buddhist one is the behavior is directly the result, is the response of what's inside us. And that's what our expertise has to be. That's the brilliance, I think, of Buddhist view about the mind, the Buddhist technology, Buddhist methodology. It's learning intimately the actual workings of your conceptual thoughts and feelings and emotions, second by second by second. It's super internal. And that's what the brilliance of this amazing skill is that these Indians, well before the Buddha invented, this incredible technique called single point of concentration, which is this technique that enables us to get laser-like sharp mind so we can do the work of unpacking and unraveling the contents of the mind. And not just so that you can see it. That's often what we think mindfulness is. Well, you observe your mind. There's anger, there's depression, there's jealousy. That's a really good start. But I remember one time in one country, it doesn't matter where it was, and these lovely people who visit people in prison. And they were talking about the different methods they were teaching, different meditations. And there is a meditation technique in Buddhism where you do simply close your eyes and observe. You notice that's anger, there's jealousy, that's this. That's a very important first step. But then I said to her, well, what do you do then? What do you tell them to do with it? And I remember this woman said, oh, you just leave it there. Now that's nihilism. That's like you're learning botany and you look at the ground and you are able to identify there's a weed and there's a herb and there's a rose. You don't just go, oh, now I'll leave it there. The only reason to learn botany is so that you know first step, identify the weed, distinguish it from a flower. Then you have to say, what's the action? And that's the point. If you just leave it there, aren't I clever? I can identify a weed and a flower. Excuse me. This is insanity. It's demented. That's nihilistic. You then got to know, what will I do with the flower? And what will I do with the weed? That's the job of being a Buddhist. And there's often, with the emphasis on mindfulness, there's often this of just observe what's there. And that is good, because sometimes we get so caught up in it. It's good just to sort of relax and watch it. We need to do that. But eventually you have to know what to do with it. What's the action? So the action is to find methods to deconstruct and understand more deeply the anger, unpack it psychologically, and that's Buddha's skill. And let's talk about that, so that we can change it. So we can literally reconfigure our thoughts. Buddha is a cognitive therapist. I tell you, a genius, the best. He's the best boss cognitive behavioral therapist. I swear, I'm not joking. To the degree of subtlety that we can't even imagine in the West, you know. Because the point is that Buddha's making, by this word Buddha, he's telling us that all the neuroses, which we know are horrible, nobody likes their jealousy, their depression, their anxiety. We often feel we have the right to think them because the boyfriend's so ugly. I'm allowed to be jealous. Look at him. And that's often what gets us stuck in mud. Sure, you're allowed to be jealous, but look at what the pain it's causing you. When we can be brave enough to own it as our own, not just see it as my right because my boyfriend's so wicked, which is how we tend to think when we're really feeling righteous, then we just go insane, you know. But when we can really start to own it's my jealousy, then I can start to understand, see it, recognize it, and then not just go, oh, there it is, and there's a flower, so there's love and there's jealousy, and leave it there. No, go further. Grow the love and diminish the jealousy. This is the essence of being a Buddhist. This is the essence of being a Buddhist. But it's not that easy, because the words are not complicated. But to have that discipline and rigor to even want to observe and recognize, identify there's jealousy, and then want to do something about it is pretty incredible, I tell you. It's pretty amazing. Because the instinct is, we will recognize we're jealous, but we want to find something out there that is the cause of it. And that's the thing that has to change as far as we're concerned. Then I'll stop being jealous. That's the nightmare for the Buddha. You can do that. He says you can change something. If you can change something, I mean, please change it. But you know, the best is to change the mind. The best is to change the mind. That's the essence of all of Buddhist psychology. That's the essence of all of Buddhist practice. And that is the conclusion that we come to if we look into the teachings more deeply and listen to the Buddha's view about where this mind comes from. Where does my jealousy come from? Not from the boyfriend. He's merely the catalyst. He did do what he did. He did cheat. No argument. But he's merely the catalyst. And that's the best way to think about it, although it's pretty intense. Because the instinctive ego likes to blame, likes to feel like an innocent victim. This is really true. You don't see in Buddhist psychology innocent victim. That's our phrase. It's a pretty powerful one. It's the natural function of having these misconceptions deep in our bones, you know. The instinct to either deny something or to beat ourselves up, which is guilt, or to blame somebody else. Everything but what is it and what can I do about it and how can I change it? This is the essence of it. But this one, go back again, we all possess this Buddha nature. I think sometimes you read in the teachings and different teachings and they're all got meaning, you know, but there's one teaching that people often say, there's certain traditions talk about how we are already Buddha. We're already Buddha. We have to learn to recognize it. Well, that, you know, from the perspective of the way our lamas teach, you would argue with that pretty quickly. You would say that's just plain foolish. That's like saying an acorn is already an oak tree. Well, people, please try and see if you can get some shade from an acorn. You will not be successful. But the point is saying we are as if we're a Buddha now is very tasty, because it can counteract that terrible self-pity and self-loathing we have, and that sense of concreteness that I'm hopeless, I'm no good, I can't do it. It can be very powerful to hear that there's a little Buddha in there, just waiting to come out. Nothing wrong with that. But technically, actually is absurd. Try getting shade from an acorn. You'll be very disappointed. But it's so delicious. If you've got a ground full of acorns you're living in the boiling hot weather, in the sun boring down on you every single summer, and you've got all these acorns around, but you never knew it was a potential oak tree. You'd feel like you'd found a treasure, isn't it? Suddenly, in 5 years, 10 years, I don't know how long oak trees take. Maybe they take, for next lifetime. But you suddenly realize you've got the potential for marvelous shade. It's a very simple example. So knowing the potential of something is incredibly powerful. And the same with people. I mean, I know when I ran the prison project, the Liberation Prison Project for many years, the 90s and up to, I stopped running it in 2009. I remember we always needing people, always needing volunteers, always needing workers. So I had this kind of optimistic mind. People would come along, and some crazy people would come along. I tell you, ex-prisoners, junkies. I didn't care. For me, it was when you can see your own potential, then you've got this ability to see the potential of other people. So these peanuts would come along. I remember this one girl who worked for us. She was really pretty disastrous, She was been ex-junkie. She was pretty crazy, but she had a good heart. She was really intelligent, and you could see she had potential, and she wanted to do something. But we're so used to judging each other on the grossest surface level. You don't like the way that person looks, or they smell, or they pick their nose, or they speak badly. We want everything to look pretty and nice, So we don't see past the surface. So we know ourselves how disappointing that is. If you've got all this potential, but nobody sees it. All they do is judge you by your behavior. It's very depressing. You get very depressed. And so it's marvelous. We know when someone else can see us and see the potential we've got. It's so powerful. This is what, what teachers should do, is what parents should do. You see the potential in the person. You've got to see it in yourself first. And then you get more confidence from that. Then you can see people and go, look at that person. She can do this and he can do that. And then, you can show them. And then we know that this is what a mentor is. We all want mentors. We all love to have a person who sees us and then helps bring out the best part of us, That's what we have to do to ourselves. So we have to look a bit deeper with ourselves for sure. We've got to see the potential instead of always identifying with the part that prevails. Like in my life, anger was like my second name, I tell you. Nobody had to teach me. My mother did not have to teach me. I had it down to perfection. So of course I was judged based on my behavior because it was not very kind. I was mean to my sisters. I had 6 siblings, all very close in age. And I was like a bully. I was horrible. I was nice too, but I was horrible. So of course my sisters got scared of me, got fed up with me being a bully. Of course they would judge me this way. And this is what's interesting with ourselves. I knew it was my old habit and I would regret it. But I knew it wasn't the real me. It wasn't the only part of me. I knew there were other parts of me in there. But it was always so disappointing to me and sad when people would always see me only as an angry person. It's so disappointing. There's more in there, but you don't know how to get it out. That's the problem. And that's been my problem all my life. Our behavior is all people see. And if our behavior isn't the best, people judge us on our behavior. And that's what we do with ourselves. That's the problem, But we're just touching the surface. We're scratching the surface. We've got to go deeper. We've got to go deeper in ourselves and see our own amazing potential. And that potential is what Buddha talks about as your mind. Your mind, We've got to see it. That means, and the point is what's interesting, when we can also see our good qualities, not just wait for someone else to see them, yourself, you've got good qualities. Then if you can start to own those, then that helps you then own the other stuff without feeling guilty and without feeling self-piteous. And then you've got to take responsibility. And it's true, you've got those other bad qualities, but that they impact upon others in a difficult way and they hurt you. So you've got to grow up and own them and know you've got to try and change them. But if you don't own your good qualities, if you only identify with your rubbish, and therefore you only see everybody else in terms of their rubbish, and that's why we have such a bad time communicating with each other, We only see the surface. You only see your own surface and you only see everybody else's. But you start to see yourself more deeply and see your own potential. And what does that mean? It's very simple in Buddhist terms. It's not how we think in the West. It's potential to be less angry, less fearful, less anxious, less neurotic, less jealous, less low self-esteem. That's a very powerful way of putting it. And then even more kind, more intelligent, more loving, more self-respectful. So you've got to work on lessening the weeds and growing the flowers. This is a really simple analogy, but a profound one, I tell you. And this demands we have some integrity. It demands we have real honesty about our minds. And often we don't have that because we're so terrified of how people think of us. We try to hide it all the time. This is one of our main faults. This is a really difficult one. And therefore we're hiding it from ourselves, We can't bear to own the rubbish because it makes us suffer. So to have this view that we've got marvelous potential is so encouraging. That will then help us realize that the shouting voices of the anger and the despair and the jealousy aren't the main part of me, even though they play a big role. And then we have more courage to own them and know that they're not set in stone, and then we can unpack and unravel them and deconstruct them and change those. Because finally, and this is the part that takes time to see, using the Buddhist view, these unhappy emotions are just the tip of the iceberg at the behavior level of subtler conceptual stories. So I think let's just look into this and analyze exactly what this means. So if I've got a relationship with my boyfriend, let's say my boyfriend is Matt, it doesn't matter, whatever. And this is using two parts now. This is using both the view of karma and Buddha's analysis of the mind. There's two levels of practice. So let's say I've got those two views and I'm trying to be a Buddhist. I'm trying to put my money where my mouth is. So let's say a simple thing, Matt says something I'm not happy with, or he behaves in a way, even if he doesn't mean to. We know what we're all like in relationships, you know. He does something that annoys me. We call it annoyance. Or even if he does something that makes me even angry, let's say. You know, I get angry. How dare you do that, I say. So let's analyze something as simple as that. Something as simple. He's not trying to kill me. He's not trying to rape me. It's just something really simple. How dare you do that? How dare you say that to me? Now that's, so then we have to go, I'm looking at my mind and Matt's gone and I'm trying to work out what happened. So what we tend to do is look at what Matt did. And if he did do something wrong, we get him to apologize for it and to admit he did do it. And then you kind of think you feel better. But I've got to look at my part of it, because it's like a tennis match. There's always two people involved, you know. He said something, he hits the ball to me, and I hit it right back. So my component was anger. So let's analyze exactly what that means. In Buddhist psychology, he talks that Buddha subsumes all the different neuroses in Buddhism. And there's a map of 84,000 delusions somewhere. I keep asking all these geshis and lamas where it is. None of them ever say they've seen it. But Buddha always talks about there are 84,000 distinct neurotic states of mind, like a whole map of it. It's very amazing, a map of the mind. These genius Indians mapped the mind more than 3,000 years ago, internally. So they all subsume into three. The root delusion, as they call it, the root neurosis in the mind, that is the root of all of our problems, so primordial, we don't even have a name for it in our culture. And it's known as simply as ignorance, but known colloquially when it's grasping at me as ego grasping, self-grasping. It's this instinctive, it's mostly like a sleeping lion, but when someone insults you, that's when it wakes up and this panic comes. How dare you do that to me, you know? So that voice is very loud. So the ego grasping, the wrong sense of me, that gives rise then to this emotional hunger, automatic, subtle, primordial, every second, to get what that fantasy me wants every millisecond. It's just like a motor that runs us. It's their default. Then Matt comes along and does that action, whatever it might be, and then anger arises, and I say, how dare you do that to me? So let's analyze that simple statement, unpack it using Buddhist view. It's very fascinating, you know. So first of all, the anger is the grossest one of those three. The anger is the response when attachment doesn't get what it wants, and attachment is the response to the belief in a separate me. So there's all this nonsense. They kind of all linked together. There's a hierarchical relationship. So let's analyze, how dare you do that to me? So how dare you do that to me? Actually, I think it's clear that's, if you personify anger and attachment, that's the personality of anger. Anger is this outrage that someone should do that thing. And you want to add more words to it, I would then say, how dare you do that to me? I don't deserve it. Analyze how we feel, you know. That's the pain of when people do bad things to us. It's, I don't deserve it. We literally go mad from that one, okay? So this is where we have to factor in two things. We have to factor in the view of karma, and we have to factor in the function of anger, which is the psychological component, and then the karmic one, which is the more long-term. So let's analyze, first of all, I don't deserve it, which is the vividest feeling we have when bad things happen. You know, the pain we experience. And this is not criticizing. This is just analyzing from the Buddhist point of view, why we suffer. why we suffer so badly, So I don't deserve it is a really amazing concept, actually. In Buddhist view, it's got no basis whatsoever in anything real. It's fantasy. It's amazing. So let's analyze it. So for example, let's say I've got a garden and it's this is the point, it's my garden. And we know that the words my garden implies that what's in it, guess who put them there? Guess who put the weeds there? I mean, we don't really put the weeds there, but think about it. It's your garden, they're your weeds. You didn't do the weeding, put it that way. And it's your garden, it's your flowers and your veggies. So it's your garden. So nobody would ever say when they look at their garden, how dare there be weeds in my garden? I don't deserve it. Think of this, think of the meaning. You would never say that because you know it's your garden and you are responsible, you are accountable, and you didn't pull the weeds out. If you look in your bank, you don't say, how dare there be no dollars in my bank? I deserve dollars. So what I'm looking at is this concept of deserve. And this plays a massive role in our daily lives of suffering. And we believe it totally. So the implication, think about it, the implication of deserve is that someone else did it. I don't deserve that. It's implying that someone else did it. When you say I deserve dollars, it implies you think there's someone out there somewhere who should put dollars in your bank. Think about that. It's absurd. It's got no meaning. It's your bank. And we know that by definition, what's in that bank is what you put there or what you didn't put there. By definition, your garden is what you put there or what you didn't take out of there. Sorry, this is really obvious. So you'd never say, I don't deserve weeds, because that implies someone else snuck along and stuck weeds in your garden. Now, this is the exact analogy for how we feel as ego. We really believe that someone else made me. Someone else put me on this planet. Somebody else gives me happiness. Somebody else gives me suffering. And the implication is I'm this hopeless person, this victim, this innocent victim who got plonked on this planet and who has no say in my happiness and has no say in my suffering. And I'm the recipient of from coming out from somewhere, like all these conspiracy theories. This is the meaning of deserve. And it's the most primordial feeling we have. I deserve to be loved, we say. I do not deserve people to be mean to me. It's got no logic. And why, from the Buddhist point of view, is this? It sounds heavy to us because we do assume that someone else made us. We assume if we're Christian that God did it. We assume if we're materialist that mummy made me. And in both cases, you have no say. You are this innocent victim and you are plonked on this earth by somebody else. I mean, for the Buddha, that's the wackiest thing he's ever heard. There's no view like that in Buddhism. It's meaningless, It's very interesting, this view. So let's analyze it from the Buddhist view. The Buddha's view is that my mind came from before. My mind is beginningless. And every millisecond of what I think and do and say sows seeds in my mind that will produce the weeds and the flowers that were produced in my garden. And my life is my garden. I come into this life with the seeds that I planted ripening in front of me every day. So just that is such a powerful view. And when we can begin to take on karma, if we choose to, no one says we have to, what comes is an incredible sense of responsibility, that you don't ever use the word deserve, because you know that whatever is in your garden, you put it there. So you have the courage to own it. And that's the shift that happens. This really takes time, I tell you. It really takes time. That's the first bit of analysis. So then if you really begin to have a view of karma, I'm still going to have anger because it's an old habit, but I won't say the words, I don't deserve it, because I know I created the cause. Equally, when Matt is kind to me, and we never ask this question, we don't care why good things happen, we just want more, please. We never, we just expect him to be kind to me. That's the assumption of attachment, which is more subtle than anger. Attachment has the assumption that I deserve Matt to be good to me every second. We all say that. So maybe the better way to put it is, I want Matt to be kind to me. That's more realistic. That's more truthful. But to say I deserve it, that's like thinking, the Buddhist view is if you don't have money in the bank, if you don't work hard and get your dollars, you don't deserve dollars in the bank because it's your dollars. And, it's your dollars. You can't say you deserve vegetables in your garden if you don't plant them. So you wouldn't say it if you know it's your garden. You wouldn't say it if you know it's your life and you produce this garden. You came into this life program with your tendencies, and whatever you meet is what you grew. is such a profound view, you know. I mean, a friend of mine years ago, Tibetan, Jigdol, who was involved in 87 in the first big uprising since 59, actually, when all the young Tibetans, all the young monks and nuns mostly, were the radicals, all demonstrating, and then they got smashed down, you know. And so he was involved in the demonstrations. He said his mother and father had 13 babies. They decided they'd make as many Tibetans as possible. They managed 13. They worked very hard, but didn't help. You know, still tiny minority of Tibetans now in Tibet. Anyway, he was a monk. He was involved in these demonstrations. He got arrested and he got tortured. Then he was released again. Then he got demonstration again, and his friend had his head blown off, and different things happened. And then he finally had to realize he had to, you know, leave the country. So he was telling me this story. It's like 30 years ago. Yeah, 30 years ago. And when he was in Kopan Monastery, he was telling me about it. And it was sad. There were tears, you know. His brother got murdered, father got murdered, these things. So I said to him very casually, I said, Jigdol, do you ever get angry? And he equally casually, he laughed in his return, in his response, very casually. And he said very casually and colloquially, he said, Rabina, angry, what for? He said, it's our own fault. Now, these words are very shocking for us in the West. It sounds like self-pity and self-blame. No, he's got the view of karma. For Tibetans, the view of karma is in their bones, has been for 1,200 years. In the same way that materialism and the brain science and mummy makes us is just the intrinsic, is the view that's just deep in our bones. We take it as truth. For them, karma is the truth. It's just the way it is. So that's why I remember the Dalai Lama saying recently that he gets so sad now seeing more Tibetans getting more angry. So that implies, logically, they're not having so much faith in Buddhism anymore, because they don't have the view of karma anymore. We don't think it like this. But anger is the one of, how dare you do that to me? I don't deserve it. And when you have the view of karma, you literally do not have anger. This is actually true. We think anger is a natural response, and it'd be bizarre if you didn't have it. Not true. It's a philosophical view deep in our bones. And that's why we have to do this analysis to unpack, you know. So we've unpacked the grossest level of anger, which is due to the fact that I think I'm an innocent victim, and I deserve Matt to be kind to me. That's a bizarre idea. It's like, I deserve dollars. I deserve cauliflowers. No, you got to plant them, baby. I'm sorry. Then you deserve them. Yeah, they're yours. You own them then. So this was very casual for the way Jigdol said it. Of course not, he said. Why? Because he doesn't have the view, I don't deserve this. This is very shocking for us. This is where anger comes from. It's a philosophical view based on deeper philosophical views. And this is the way you have to practice as a Buddhist. You've got to deconstruct the assumptions of anger, the assumptions of attachment. So again, the assumption of anger is, I do not deserve bad things. The assumption of attachment, which informs anger, which is a subtler one beneath anger, is I only deserve good things. So the fact is, as long as Matt is kind to me and strokes me and loves me and gives me things, I won't, you know, every second won't keep saying, oh, that's very nice, isn't he kind, I deserve it. It'll just be this implicit, this deep assumption that I'm getting what I deserve. And then when he's not kind, how outraged I am. This is so clearly delusional, you know. Of course, it takes time to unpack it. So in other words, attachment, as Lama Zopa says, or the Buddha says, sorry, this is the main cause of suffering. It seems so odd to us because we don't think of attachment like this. It's this deep assumption in our bones, this deep hubris that I must get what I want every millisecond because I deserve only the good things. And what we mean by that is we have no role in anything. We just stuck on this earth and good things had better happen. So of course, attachment is incredibly self-centered and it's not logical for the Buddha. So so hearing this is quite shocking to us, to unpack this assumption of attachment, an assumption that I deserve only the good. To say I want only the good, now that's correct. We only want the nice things and we don't want the bad. That's much more accurate. But the way we've given it this extra level of arrogance, it really is arrogance. It sounds shocking. Attachment is arrogance. Anger is arrogance. How dare you do that to me? And we should have compassion. This is why we go mad when bad things happen. Because we don't question that assumption that I don't deserve it or I do deserve it. That's a heavy word, deserve, but we use that. Buddha doesn't use that. If you sow a seed, you get the fruit. If you don't pull out the weeds are yours. If you don't put dollars in the bank, that's your bank account with no money in it. There are reasons, of course, but the fundamental ownership of it is the point here, the ownership, and that's what comes from karma. Of course, it's a difficult hypothesis for us. It's not natural for us. We're so familiar with the view that mummy made me, God made me, you know, and I'm this innocent victim who got plonked here that plays no role in my life. I mean, it's really quite depressing. It implies that we're very disconnected from ourselves, so very disconnected from what's going on inside. We don't own what's going on inside. We deny what's going on, or we blame, or we get guilt. 3 absurd responses, you know. This unpacking is really important. And that's the tiniest one. Don't wait until Matt leaves you for a younger version to start to think about karma. Don't wait till Matt leaves you for a younger version to look at your anger. And the trouble is, for most of us, we mightn't have what most of us think of as anger. You don't shout and yell. Oh, I'm not angry, you say. But all of us have a version, which is the fundamental state of mind, of which anger is a volatile expression. Because attachment and aversion are these 2 neuroses that we go between like 1,000 times a day at very subtle levels that we wouldn't even notice in our behavior. You don't even show that you've got them, but they're in the mind. And we're going between them all the time. And this is what builds up tension. And eventually we collapse one day and go crazy and kill yourself or kill Matt, you know, because we're not paying attention to the mind at a subtler level. And that's what the Buddhist view says we have to do the job he says we can do. We've got to be really, as Lama puts it, Lama Yeshe, we've really got to learn to be our own therapist, to know our mind intimately, second by second. Of course it takes time, but we're so distracted by the outside. I'm obsessed with what Matt did. I mightn't even ever look at my own mind. I don't deserve that. How dare? And then we feel justified. If he's mean and ugly, I'm justified in being angry, and I'm justified in being jealous. We feel that. So the Buddha's point is, and this is also so profound that we could hear it. Forget about karma. Forget whether you think it came from a peanut or from a creator. I don't care. This is already so powerful. And this is what Buddha's saying. If we could start to be in touch with our minds and feel the pain of jealousy and depression and anxiety and low self-esteem and arrogance and anger, etc. If we could just feel the pain that's so evident to us, that should be enough to want to change our minds as quickly as possible. But we're so addicted to thinking I'm an innocent victim of it, and it's not my fault, and it's Matt's fault, and I deserve to be jealous. I'm allowed to be jealous. What do you mean I should change, Rabina? Matt should change. So that shows how profoundly disconnected we are, it seems to me, from our own thoughts. We're so disconnected. We know we're miserable, but we defend our right to be miserable. I mean, that's completely bizarre. Because we really don't believe it's possible to change our mind, because we're so full of this outraged idea. What do you mean I should change my mind? I'm allowed to be this way. He should change. That's how addicted we are to these unhappy states of mind, you know. So we do notice we're in pain, but we're so addicted to the blame mode, but it's his fault. And when he stops doing that, I'm going to feel better. We're familiar with all this. And this is deeply ingrained in all of us from deep habits we bring with us, Buddha says, you know. Your mother didn't teach you this stuff. So first, having this incredibly optimistic view that your delusions don't define you, that your virtues define you. In other words, you know, if we keep identifying like the acorn, if you just think I am an acorn, like that's how we think now, I'm a human being. That's what we think. We define ourselves as a human being. We are a human being. An acorn is an oval-shaped thing with a hat on it, but an acorn is more than that. The same with a human being. We are a human being. But what we do is we spend our lives seeing a human being as self-existent and make us the best looking human being with the least number of wrinkles and polishing ourselves up every day and changing the acorn's hat every day and making the acorn nice and smooth, and then you dye an acorn. That's kind of pretty concrete, isn't it? It's not recognizing the nature of an acorn. An acorn is a dynamic thing that turns it from a small thing to a magnificent tree. Well, we're a dynamic thing too. We're not just this human being plonked, you know, and make them the shiniest, nicest possible. No. You're a work in progress. You can become an oak tree. You've got all the potentials are there. The intelligence, the love, the kindness, the compassion. The delusions are not at the core of our being. Like say in Buddhist psychology, they're adventitious. You can get rid of them and we can grow to perfection, the good stuff. So having that view of yourself is sublime, because then you start to see yourself profoundly differently. You own your rubbish because you know it's breaking your heart and you're sick of it. And it's what causes you to harm others. And you are delighted in your good qualities. You own your good qualities. You rejoice in your good qualities. And also you're super clear and precise in your ability to analyze and to identify and to distinguish day by day by day the difference between these different parts of us, which is like a big soup of emotion right now. This is the actual job, day by day, of being a Buddhist, you know. Being your own therapist, as Lama Yeshe puts it, based on the view of karma and based on the view of the mind. Buddha's very specific presentations. Of course, we can take 1% of this, it's fine. You're allowed to do what you like with it, you know. What do you think, people? Any questions?
Yes. Hi, Venerable Rubina. I have 2 questions.
Who is it? Who's talking?
Ming.
Who's Ming? Oh, Ming, hello, darling. Where are
Hi.
you? Where do you live?
I live in Pojoaque.
Where's that?
It's up north from Santa Fe.
Oh, okay, good, very good. Talk to me, sweetheart.
I have 2 questions. One is, why is like these samskaras and habitual tendencies and things, is it after a certain age that they are harder to get rid of? And is that the reason why some religions don't want to recruit older people? And then my second question is, solitary confinement, after like 3 or 4 days, most people like lose it, you know?
That's right. Exactly.
And I want to know if an enlightened person in solitary confinement would lose it or not, if they were like fed a bottle of rice a day and that's it.
I understand, darling. You know, I don't even think you need to be enlightened. I'll answer the first part, the second part first. From my own experience of lots of people in prison who spent years and years and years in solitary confinement, even ordinary people don't go crazy because they find methods to use their own mind and change themselves. And that's what's so encouraging. I always use this example of one woman I know. She's out of prison now. She was arrested in the 70s. Her name is Sunny. She works a lot with people who've been in prison and have been falsely accused, because she and her husband were falsely accused of killing 2 policemen back in the 70s. So she was just this hippie with her kids and hitching along, and they got arrested for murder and they were on death row. Well, she was there 12 years and then she finally was off death row, and she took another 5 years to finally get out because she was innocent. They were both innocent. He even got executed. She went to his execution and his head burst into flames. I mean, you can't imagine the nightmare, you know, you just can't imagine the nightmare. So this nightmare of being a completely innocent hippie, the shock of your life, you know, you've never done a heart, you've not even hurt flies, and suddenly you're accused of killing 2 policemen and nobody believes you. So this alone is enough, even if you're not in solitary, to make you go completely out of your brain. If we look at our lives, like I said before, when someone does something bad to us, even a mild thing, we kind of, this is the worst pain in the world, isn't it? When we know we don't deserve it. That's how deep the pain is, because we think I did nothing, and look at what Matt did to me. So can you imagine the nightmare of this? And I remember reading at the same time about a man also on death row, and you read now more and more in the news, especially in this country, with great respect. I'm allowed to criticize. I'm an American as well as an Australian. I've got a passport back in 2006. I asked, when I went for my passport, I asked her, can I keep my other passports? Because I've got British and Australian. And she said, we don't mind how many passports you have, as long as you have allegiance to the United States. So I have to feel like an American, you know. Anyway, never mind. So anyway, I read at the same, so many people now being, you know, there's just people, many people, there's a whole group of an organization all over the country, the Justice something or other, proving people's wrong convictions. People have 30 years, 40 years, 20 years in prison from wrong convictions. And so many people that I know using the Buddhist tools, for example, or this friend Sunny, who wasn't a Buddhist, she did yoga and things, the incredible strength of their mind. She was in a cell for years on end in solitary confinement with a Bible. That was it. And she was innocent. I mean, just get past the innocence part, just even get past that. But she said that she knew she couldn't change this, but she had the choice to change her mind. She knew she had choice. And that's what's incredible. She learned to do yoga. She learned to work with herself. She kept sane, and she managed to grow herself even as a good human being. So it was incredible. And this is the interesting point. When she eventually got out from solitary, because she wasn't out of her brain with rage and despair, she was capable of continuing to work on her freedom. She didn't just sit there and become a nice person and accept this nightmare. She never stopped working on her freedom. But you imagine, like there's one other man I read about, which is normal. It's normal, you know, Ming. He went out of his brain completely, raging daily. I did not rape and kill that woman. I did not rape and kill that woman. That's understandable. So if you do the Buddhist analysis, which seems very shocking to us, that's because of attachment, anger, all these other states of mind. And you'd said to him when he was out of his brain with rage, unfairly accused of rape and murder, well, you know, darling, you could change your mind. He would think you're insane. What do you mean I should change my mind? I'm innocent. But that's the point the Buddha's saying. I didn't do what Matt said. The tiniest thing he accused me of, I didn't do it. So don't wait till you've been accused of murder to work on your mind. So the point about solitary confinement, of course, is 1,000 times harder. But if we can tap into our own potential, that's what this woman did. She learned to do yoga. She did yoga before, so she did yoga. She did practices. She worked on her mind every single day. She wasn't a Buddhist. She had no label for a religion. She just had the ability to see that she didn't have to be set in stone and didn't have to go crazy. That's what's possible. And certainly that is the Buddha's view. But don't wait till you're in solitary confinement to do that. Do that every day when bad things happen. Know that we change our interpretation.
I'm sorry.
Pardon?
Rubina, Venerable Rubina, what did she do? Like, did she start counting the
She worked on her mind. She looked at herself. She knew she knew she had choices. She knew she didn't need to be angry. She didn't need to be enraged. She didn't need to do those things. She could change the way she thought, plus doing yoga and meditation. They're not magic, but what I'm saying is everything is how we interpret it, Ming. So if I'm there, if everything is how we interpret things, we don't realize that. You see, we believe there's no choice but to be miserable if Matt accuses me of something. We believe there's no choice to be miserable if we're on our own in a cell. It's normal to go crazy, but you can change the way you see it. Great yogis choose to be on their own for years on end because they have these incredible, brilliant techniques to know about their own mind. They're capable. They want to be on their own. So you have to know what to do with your mind, Ming, and that's Buddha's expertise. I have to admit that, you know. Do you see my point? It's our thoughts, it's our feelings, it's our emotions, but we never pay attention to them.
I think I get it now. It's just that I guess, like you said, it's all pervasive and considered normal that a deprivation of senses after 4 or 5 days would make anyone go crazy when they only let you have one thing.
Precisely. That's exactly right. It is normal, and that is normal, but we are capable. And I've got ordinary examples to prove this. Even people who aren't even spiritual do other things. They do exercise, they do things, they train their mind, they think of different things. They know, the key is to know you've got the power to work with your own mind. We don't need to be sitting there going crazy. We've got the power to change our mind. And that's a pretty rare thing because we don't think we have. Do you understand me? So it helps to have techniques, doesn't it? It helps to know you can. Do you understand, darling?
Yeah.
So the first one. Yeah, good. So the first point, your first point, I don't know about what other religions, I don't know about that. In Buddhism, you can be 97 and become a Buddhist. That's your decision, and don't worry about it. But of course, really? As you get older, our habits get more entrenched, don't they? Of course they do. That's obvious. That's obvious, you know. That's pretty clear. But there's never too late. We will always change to the best of our.
That's good to know.
Good to know, I mean, have confidence.
Thank you so much, Venerable Rubina.
Thank you so much. Thank you, sweetheart. What else, people? Any more questions? Any more thoughts, people? Now 10 minutes to go.
Hello, Venerable Rubina.
Who's that?
This is Dawn.
I can't hear you. There you go, Dawn. Hello, sweetheart.
Hi. So I wanted to, it's been on my mind what Buddhism view is on social justice demonstrations like your friend was telling you about.
Yes, exactly.
And he was considered radical.
Yes.
But so why was he considered radical as demonstrations, and can we participate in social justice demonstrations and still stay in the essence of non-duality and non-discrimination?
Absolutely. But the key is, you know, Dawn, using the Buddhist, this is a lovely analogy I use all the time. A bird needs two wings, wisdom and compassion. So compassion is the point. And if you think about it, compassion is the action wing, is get out there and change the world. Look at the meaning of the word politics, you know, it's the people. That's compassion. Compassion is getting out there and helping people in whatever level you like. Any level you like. That's the compassion wing. But our problem is, and I can see this myself from being an old radical lefty. I mean, since I was like 19, I gave up God when I was 19. Then I became this raging hippie. Then I became this raging radical lefty in London in the 60s, both radical left politics, got arrested on Fleet Street, black politics, feminist politics. I was a total activist. And that was a compassion wing. I meant well. I wanted to change the world. I was so noble, you know, but I could see, then I became a Buddhist later. I remember I always joke and say, when I was a Catholic, I blamed all the non-Catholics. Then I was a radical lefty, I blamed all the rich people. Then I was into black politics, and it was the time of the Panthers back in the 60s, 70s. I blamed all the white people. Then I blamed all the male people, and I became a feminist. And I had no one left to blame. I was exhausted. So finally I met these Tibetans, and they told me I should start looking at the mind. That was a brand new idea to me, you know, looking at my own mind. And I could see that was the piece that was missing. I was out of control with anger. I was full of rage, and it seemed noble at the time, but it was just destroying everything. So this is why I love Martin Luther King. He said, I mean, you look at that guy. I loved Malcolm X at the time. I thought Martin Luther King was ridiculous. I was an old radical, you know, an activist. So I loved Malcolm X. I love him still. Amazing human being. But Martin Luther King said, and look at him. For me, he was a totally patient person. He did not get angry. He didn't rage. But look at his activism. He said, I know he said, it blew my mind. He said, it is good to find fault. It's good to not be angry, meaning shout and yell. It's good to see there's suffering and there's racism and there's this and there's thatism. Look at the world. And then you say, what can I do to help? That's compassion. And that's the real one. So get out there, and I don't mean to be a pacifist in the kind of in a cliched sense. Get out there and be active and be clear and be strong and be brave and stand up for rights, but not out of rage, not out of vindictiveness, not out of righteousness, not out of kind of anger, which is the typical view. Now, if you've got the Buddhist view, like my friend Jigdrol, he was not angry, but he looked like they were angry, all shouting and yelling with their placards, but they have the view of karma, so they knew that they created the cause for this suffering, but it was still wrong. You understand? It's wrong. So if there's injustice, do what we can to change it, but don't hold your breath. It's not going to be magic overnight, you know? So to act with courage to try and help is the compassion wing, but it's got to come on the basis of solid hard work on your own mind, where you've given up your anger and your resentment and your neuroses to some degree. So then you've got a really balanced approach to it. Do you understand? You won't go crazy, you won't lose the plot, you won't just get angry, which is where everything goes crazy when the anger kicks in, you know? Anger is understandable, but having a sound understanding of your own mind, then seeing the world the way it is suffering, absolutely do everything we can to help. And that's what compassion means.
Thank you. I understand.
It's got to come from the right place. It's got to come from the bigger picture, not just wanting to smash that group, which is what's typical. I know when I was an old radical lefty, the biggest problem was we started to fight internally with each other because suddenly everybody had different views. So one group fought with that group and fought with that group, forgetting the real issue in the end because anger kept taking over. That's the disaster. But having the clarity to see there's injustice, to say that there's injustice, that's not anger, that's fact. But to put anger on top of it destroys it. I remember the Dalai Lama said, when the journalist said to him, anger looks like it's very good, it helps. He said, I know what you mean, but if it's mainly coming from anger, then it doesn't last. It's just explosive and then it gets exhausted. Whereas if it's coming from compassion, which is a courageous attitude that wants to make the world a better place, then you will never give up. You'll never give up. You can see that in demonstrations. The people who get angry easily and all explode, and then they all just couldn't care. But the ones who never stop working at it solidly, day by day, chipping away, doing what they can. You understand? That's compassion, honey.
Yes.
It makes sense, Dawn.
It does. I've heard your story a bit by watching your videos about those phases of your life, and
yes, I see.
So I knew I was hoping to get your experience, and then you brought this gentleman's experience in.
Yes.
And I guess I feel like social activism can happen at the demonstrations peacefully, like mindfully, with no anger, but also just by making 20 burritos and passing them out, or talking to other perceptions, like I have clients with different views, and so I might get a conspiracy theorist or someone with a lot of different views, and I'll just ask them about it and listen, and maybe like provide some of my own thoughts as well. But I feel like that's a little social activism, a little bit on a level.
And social activism can be the smallest thing. Like you said, making a burrito for somebody. This is what's marvelous these days. Usually you just hear the bad stories and all the press and all the, the stories. But now all these kind people, like children and older people, doing doing things to help people. That's activism. If you just lift your finger to do one thing for one person, that's social activism. You can be at the level of an organizer of the whole world, or you can be at a simple level of helping your next door neighbor. All of it is social activism. If you think about it, it's reaching out and it's connecting with others, including the ones you don't like. It's so true. It's so true, Dawn. But the thing is, when there's not anger involved, you can still be strong. You can still shout and yell, but it won't be just out of the wish to harm people, because that's often what happens when there's anger. You just want to smash the opposite group, and that's a disaster. It doesn't help anything. And that's why the Dalai Lama is a great example. For 60 years, that man has not stopped, socially, politically, diplomatically, scientifically, religiously, in every possible method. He hasn't stopped acting to try and change the situation in Tibet, and he never gives up. And that's where, when you've got no anger, like my friend Sunny on death row for 17 years in this nightmarish environment, she never gave up. But when you have so much anger, it destroys you. It distresses and destroys you, and you kill yourself or you kill someone else. You go mad. And we're not used to thinking this way in our culture. We don't make the distinction between anger and kind of action. We think if you're not angry, you become weak. We chuck the baby out for the bathwater. It's more nuanced than that. Anger is an attitude that can't cope with what they're seeing, but patience is a very powerful attitude that never gives up trying to change something. Do you understand?
I like to
Do you
piggyback
understand what
on.
I'm saying, Dawn?
Yes, Venerable Rubina, I so understand what you're saying, and I've had my own journey with anger. I used to be very angry.
Yes.
So in that way, I hear your story too, as I've listened on
Yes.
other recorded,
Uh-huh.
and I just the
Good.
transformation that has come in my own. Anyways, thank you. I do understand.
Keep going, honey. Never give up is the key to success, Dawn.
Thank you.
Time to go, I think. But Ming wanted to say something more. Ming, what did you want to say, darling?
Oh, I just wanted to say that when I lived in Japan, I was very used to being super nice and everything. And when I came here, I was taken for an idiot.
There you go.
It's
So
like,
what have you learned from that?
it's very hard to be nice and not interpret it that way.
There you go. Exactly. And Ming, I think you hit on the head. It's easy to say you're angry and you shout and yell and scream, and then you think, oh, I'm being patient. But what happens is when you give up what we think is anger, you also chuck the baby out with the bathwater and become weak. We think that's the option. So then we think, oh, I'm a nice person running around. But what happens is if it's a bit weak nice, it's kind of wishy-washy nice, being a nice girl, you can get used like a doormat. So nice has to be strong, and we have to be flexible but strong. It's much more nuanced than just being a nice girl or just being an angry girl. It's more nuanced than that. When we start to know our mind, we can see the difference. So when we're patient, we're very powerful because you don't give up. And you won't get misused by people, but it has to become conscious, not just pretending to be these things. It's got to become more internal. And that's what we have to learn to do, Ming. Do you understand, darling?
I think so.
Good, sweetheart. Slowly. Don't worry, slowly, honey. One step at a time.
Enjoying all of your Dharma talks. Thank you.
I'm so happy, darling. Very glad. Thank you. So here we go. 1 hour gone like a dream, chatting away. Maybe there's some useful thoughts, useful advice, but the essence of it is never forget your own potential. Never forget, never give up on it, and persevere and have the integrity to own what's there, which takes time. And then we can start to see others. So so Dalai Lama says compassion is the point, but compassion is not enough. You've got to have wisdom, and that's the internal work. That makes us strong and clear and courageous, and then we'll be amazing on the compassion wing, helping others. Okay. Thank you, darlings, everybody. Jang Chub, Semchog Rinpoche, Ma Kie Panam Kie Gyochi, Kie Panyam Pa Me Pa Yang, Gong Ne Gong Du Pa Ba Sho.